Right now, as you watch this, you are probably thinking you understand how the world works. You believe that intelligence is celebrated, that smart people rise to the top, that society rewards deep thinking. But what if I told you that everything you think you know about intelligence and society is backwards? Here is the devastating truth that will shatter everything you believed. Intelligence isn't rewarded in our society. It is actively punished, and the smarter you are, the more isolated and rejected you'll become. You are living in a world that claims to value brilliance while systematically destroying those who possess it. And the most terrifying part, this isn't an accident, it is by design. Think about the last time you met someone who was physically stronger than you. Did you feel threatened? Probably not. You might have admired their strength, maybe even felt motivated to hit the gym yourself. Now think about encountering someone wealthy. Sure, you might feel a twinge of envy, but it doesn't attack your core identity. But what happens when you meet someone who is intellectually superior? Something strange shifts in the room. The air becomes thick with tension. Conversations become stilted. People start making excuses to leave. This isn't coincidence. It is psychology in action. When faced with physical or material superiority, we're dealing with external qualities. But intelligence. Intelligence cuts straight to the heart of who we are. It challenges our thoughts, our beliefs, our entire understanding of reality. And when that happens, our brains don't see a fellow human being, they see a threat. Here's what is really happening. Every deep thinker becomes a walking mirror, reflecting back the intellectual limitations of everyone around them, and people will do anything to avoid looking in that mirror. Scientists call this the mirror effect, and it has been destroying brilliant minds for centuries. The mere presence of someone who thinks deeply triggers an unconscious defense mechanism in others. They don't just feel uncomfortable, they feel inadequate, exposed, threatened at their very core. This is why throughout history, society's brightest minds have been pushed to the fringes, ridiculed, silenced, or worse. Their crime wasn't being wrong, it was being right too soon. Modern brain imaging reveals something shocking. When people encounter someone they perceive as intellectually superior, their amygdala, the brain's fear center, lights up like a Christmas tree. The same neural pathways that activate when facing a physical threat fire when facing intellectual challenge. Think about that for a moment. Your brain literally processes deep thinkers as dangerous. But why would evolution wire us this way? The answer lies in our tribal past. For thousands of years, survival meant fitting in with the group. Being accepted by the tribe was literally life or death. Intellectual mavericks who challenged group beliefs were seen as threats to social harmony and therefore threats to survival itself. This ancient programming still runs in our modern brains. When someone enters a social setting and disrupts the intellectual equilibrium, every other person's threat detection system activates. It is not personal, it is primal. The cruel irony, the very quality that should elevate humanity intelligence, has been branded as socially dangerous by our own biology. A 2021 Stanford Street UDI uncovered something even more disturbing. Researchers found that people react differently to intelligence depending on the setting. In one-on-one conversations, the threat response is manageable, but in group settings, the fear spikes dramatically. Why? Because in groups, it is not just about feeling intellectually inferior, it is about being seen as inferior by others. Social status becomes weaponized. If someone feels outshined by a deep thinker, they instinctively try to undermine or exclude them to protect their standing in the social hierarchy. This explains why so many brilliant people find meaningful connections in private, but struggle in larger social environments. It is not that they lack social skills. It is that their very presence triggers a coordinated psychological defense response from the group. Here is something that will disturb you. Society doesn't actually want truth, it wants comfort. Walk into any social gathering and observe the conversations. What dominates? Small talk about weather, sports, celebrity gossip, shallow, predictable exchanges that require no mental effort and challenge no existing beliefs. Now watch what happens when someone tries to introduce a complex idea or thought-provoking question. The discomfort is immediate and palpable. People shift in their seats, change the subject, or simply walk away. This isn't rudeness, it is self-preservation. The human brain craves what psychologists call cognitive ease. Simple, familiar information feels safe because it doesn't require energy or adjustment complex. Nuanced ideas feel dangerous because they force mental work and potential belief revision. Here is the hidden truth. Society has been programmed to choose comfort over growth, familiarity over truth, and simplicity over depth. Three cognitive biases work together to create this intellectual resistance. The Dunning-Kruger effect reveals that people with limited knowledge overestimate their intelligence, while truly intelligent people underestimate theirs. This creates a perfect storm where the least informed speak with the most confidence, while the most informed doubt themselves into silence. Status quo bias makes people defend existing systems even when those systems work against them. Why? Because change feels uncertain and threatening, even when current conditions are objectively harmful. The backfire effect shows that when confronted with information that contradicts existing beliefs, people don't change their minds, they double down harder on their original position. Deep thinkers who present challenging ideas often face this brick wall of willful ignorance. In our digital age, these tendencies have been weaponized. Social media algorithms don't reward depth, they reward engagement. Controversial, emotionally charged content spreads like wildfire while thoughtful, nuanced discussions disappear into obscurity. The result: a society that celebrates intellectual junk food while starving its greatest minds of the attention and resources they need to thrive. Arthur Schopenhauer, one of history's most brutally honest philosophers, believed that intelligence wasn't a gift, it was a curse. The smarter you are, he argued, the more isolated and misunderstood you'll become. But why would the ability to think deeply be considered a burden? Schopenhauer identified a fundamental split in human nature. Most people are driven by what he called the will to live, a blind instinctual force pushing them toward pleasure, comfort, and survival. They seek happiness through relationships, entertainment, material success, and social validation. But highly intelligent people develop something different: the will to truth. They become consumed with understanding reality, even when that understanding brings pain, loneliness, and disillusionment. Here is what happens when you see the world too clearly. You can't unsee the lies that make other people comfortable. While others find meaning in small talk, intelligent people see meaningless chatter. While others enjoy status games and social climbing, deep thinkers recognize the futility of such pursuits. While others chase money, power, and popularity, intellectuals question why these things matter at all. This creates an unbridgeable gap. You start to feel like you are living in a different reality from everyone around you. Social interactions become exhausting because they feel shallow and performative. You crave depth, but the world offers only surface-level engagement. Schopenhauer compared this to having heightened senses in a world that is too loud, too bright, and too overwhelming. The very awareness that should be your strength becomes your weakness in social situations. The most painful part: you realize that ignorance truly is bliss, and your intelligence has cost you that bliss forever. This is why so many brilliant minds throughout history have struggled with depression, anxiety, and existential crisis. Nietzsche, Pascal, Kafka, Van Gogh all possessed extraordinary intelligence, and all suffered profound isolation and mental anguish. They weren't broken. They were simply paying the price for seeing reality too clearly in a world that prefers comfortable illusions. Every generation tells itself it is more enlightened than the last. We look back at history and shake our heads at how society treated its greatest minds. If only we'd lived then, we think, we would have recognized their genius. But history reveals a disturbing pattern. Society doesn't just fail to recognize brilliance, it actively punishes it. Socrates spent his life encouraging people to think critically and examine their beliefs. His reward: a death sentence for corrupting the youth and questioning authority. His real crime wasn't philosophy, it was making people uncomfortable with their unexamined assumptions. Galileo proved that Earth revolves around the sun, shattering centuries of religious dogma. The church forced him to publicly deny his own discoveries under threat of torture. He lived his final years under house arrest, his revolutionary work banned for nearly a century. Nikola Tesla envisioned free energy for the world and wireless electricity that could have transformed human civilization. But powerful industrialists saw his ideas as threats to their profit margins. Tesla died alone and broke, while others built fortunes using his stolen innovations. Alan Turing's code-breaking genius helped end World War II, and laid the foundation for modern computing. Society's gratitude: chemical castration for his homosexuality, leading to his tragic suicide at 41. Each of these minds shared the same fate. They introduced ideas too advanced for their time and were punished for their brilliance. The pattern is always the same. Revolutionary thinkers are dismissed as dangerous, crazy, or heretical. Their ideas are suppressed, their work is stolen, and their contributions are only recognized after they're safely dead, and can no longer challenge the status quo. But here is what is truly disturbing. This pattern hasn't stopped. It is happening right now, in our supposedly enlightened modern age. If you thought the internet would democratize intelligence and give deep thinkers a platform, think again. Digital technology has actually made the rejection of intelligence more systematic and efficient than ever before. Social media algorithms are programmed for one thing: engagement, and what engages people most, not thoughtful analysis or nuanced discussion. Controversy, outrage, and emotional manipulation dominate feeds, while intellectual content disappears into obscurity. Try to compress a complex philosophical idea into a tweet or TikTok video. It is nearly impossible without losing all nuance and depth. Meanwhile, simple, emotionally charged soundbites spread like wildfire, regardless of their accuracy or value. The result is a global information ecosystem that rewards shallow thinking and punishes intellectual depth. Echo chambers have replaced open discourse. People seek out information that confirms their existing beliefs while actively avoiding perspectives that might challenge them. When deep thinkers try to introduce new ideas, they're not met with curiosity. They're met with algorithmic suppression and social media mob attacks. The most viral content isn't the most true or valuable, it is the most immediately gratifying. Complex truths that require time and mental effort to understand can't compete with instant dopamine hits delivered through simple, often false, emotional triggers. This creates a vicious cycle. Intelligent people, frustrated by the superficiality of digital discourse, withdraw from online spaces. This leaves the conversation dominated by those who either can't or won't engage with complex ideas, further lowering the intellectual bar. We've created a world where being smart is not just unrewarded, it is algorithmically disadvantaged. The rejection of intelligence isn't just social or digital, it is built into our most important institutions. Educational systems claim to value intelligence but actually reward conformity and obedience. Students who memorize and regurgitate information succeed, while those who question authority or think independently are labeled as troublemakers. The system produces compliant workers, not innovative thinkers. In the corporate world, companies talk about wanting disruptive innovation, but consistently promote employees who fit the existing culture over those who challenge it. Original thinkers are seen as risks to stability and hierarchy. The most intelligent employees often find themselves sidelined while less capable, but more politically savvy colleagues advance. Politics rewards candidates who tell people what they want to hear, not those who speak difficult truths. Nuanced policy discussions lose to simple slogans and emotional appeals. Politicians who try to address complex issues with sophisticated solutions are dismissed as elitists or out of touch. Every institution that should celebrate intelligence has evolved mechanisms to suppress it, in favor of maintaining existing power structures. This explains why our most celebrated historical intellectuals were often outcasts during their lifetimes. Society only embraces intelligence once it has been safely sanitized and can no longer threaten the established order. Van Gogh died in poverty, his revolutionary artistic vision unrecognized. Today, his paintings sell for hundreds of millions. Nikola Tesla lived in obscurity while lesser minds built empires on his ideas. Galileo was imprisoned for his discoveries, but is now praised as a hero of science. The pattern is clear: society celebrates dead geniuses while persecuting living ones. If you've recognized yourself in this description, if you felt the sting of intellectual isolation, or the frustration of being misunderstood, you might be wondering, is there any hope? The answer is yes, but it requires a fundamental shift in how you approach the world. First, stop trying to be understood by everyone. The harsh reality is that most people aren't ready for deep conversations or complex ideas. This isn't their fault, they're operating according to evolutionary programming that prioritizes social harmony over intellectual growth. Trying to force depth on those who prefer surface-level interaction will only frustrate you and make them uncomfortable. Instead, focus on finding your intellectual tribe. Seek out the small percentage of people who genuinely appreciate depth and complexity. These connections might be rare, but they'll be infinitely more meaningful than dozens of shallow social interactions. Second, learn to translate complexity into accessibility. Einstein said, "If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough." This doesn't mean dumbing down your ideas. It means finding ways to make them approachable. Great teachers aren't those who know the most. They're those who can build bridges between complex concepts and curious minds. Third, embrace your solitude. Schopenhauer viewed alone time, not as punishment but as privilege. Use your intellectual isolation productively. Read voraciously, write extensively, create boldly. Your most important conversations might be with long-dead philosophers, through their books, or with future generations through your own work. Fourth, choose your battles wisely. Not every situation requires you to share your deepest insights. Learn to read social contexts and adapt accordingly. Sometimes the most intelligent thing you can do is remain silent and observe, gathering insights about human nature that you can process later in private. Fifth, remember that being ahead of your time is both a blessing and a burden. The ideas that seem obvious to you might be revolutionary to others. Be patient with society's slow pace of intellectual evolution, while staying true to your vision of what is possible. Finally, find meaning in the journey itself, not in external validation. Society may never fully appreciate your intellectual contributions during your lifetime. That is okay. The pursuit of truth and understanding has its own inherent value, regardless of whether others recognize it. Here is something that might comfort you. Every advance in human civilization has come from individuals who thought differently, who saw possibilities others couldn't imagine, who were willing to be misunderstood in service of truth. Society needs its deep thinkers, especially when it doesn't know how to embrace them. You are not broken for thinking deeply. You are not weird for craving meaningful conversations. You are not antisocial for finding small talk exhausting. You are part of a small but crucial minority that pushes humanity forward, one uncomfortable truth at a time. The loneliness you feel is the price of seeing the world as it really is rather than as others wish it to be. That price is steep, but the alternative, willful ignorance, is ultimately more costly to both individuals and society. Every time you choose truth over comfort, depth over superficiality, growth over stagnation, you are contributing to humanity's slow evolution toward greater wisdom and understanding. You may not see the results in your lifetime, but you are planting seeds that will grow long after you are gone. The world fears intelligence, because intelligence reveals the world as it truly is. But that revelation, however uncomfortable, is exactly what humanity needs to grow. So continue thinking deeply. Continue asking difficult questions. Continue seeking truth even when it is unpopular. The world may not thank you for it, but future generations will inherit a slightly more enlightened society because you refuse to settle for comfortable lies. You are not alone in your thoughts. You are part of an invisible network of deep thinkers scattered throughout history and across the globe, each one carrying the torch of human consciousness a little further into the darkness. And that despite all the loneliness and misunderstanding is a purpose worth embracing. The question isn't whether society will ever fully embrace its deep thinkers. The question is whether you'll have the courage to keep thinking deeply despite society's resistance. Because in the end, the world changes not through the comfort of the many, but through the courage of the few who dare to see and speak the truth.